Look, I don't know. I don't know how to reach out to people my age and try to convince you that things are only going to get worse, which they will, and that we need to band together, which we have to if we're going to survive what's coming. But the time is now. There is no later date that's going to work. I mean, there's been 20% inflation since 2020. 4 years have gone by, and we've seen 20% inflation from that time. If you were making 85 grand in 2020, you'd need to make 105, almost $106,000 today to be making the same amount of money. That's crazy. But we're not talking about that as a generation. As a generation, we're talking about what color handbag we're going to go to work with, or what kind of clothes we're going to wear lounging around the house, because no one in our generation actually goes anywhere anymore. I mean, what's it going to take? What does it take to get across to people my own age that we need to start being prepared for everything that's going to come, whether it's climate change, economic instability, social unrest, foreign interference? We're going to have all sorts of geopolitical crises in the coming decade and decades. We need to take control of this country if we're going to prevent another country from coming in here and taking control. How are we going to keep our own nation if we're not even represented within the nation? That's a huge issue, and that's something that we as a generation are the only ones that can address. We're the only ones who can address this issue. The older generations, baby boomers, even Gen X, they don't care. Baby boomers are going to be dead by the time any of this stuff matters, and Gen X are so concerned with trying to get their inheritance from baby boomers that they could hardly care about what happens in our lifetimes. They barely even care what happens in their own lifetimes, and they're more than willing to sacrifice their own children if it means that they survive. Gen X are weak and cowardly, and baby boomers are traitorous. We need to be looking out for ourselves, because none of them are going to look out for us. The poor millennials, they're just unprepared. They're gullible. They seem to think that the world can continue being the way it is for a little while longer, and maybe things will improve. But we know better. We ought to know better. We've lived through constant war. How many of people our generation who are in their 20s, maybe early 30s, have seen nonstop war between the Gulf Wars, the invasion of Afghanistan? I mean, we have never been at peace in this country. We're not even at peace in this country today, because we're sending billions to Israel and Ukraine, and I'm sure we're going to send billions to Taiwan when they get invaded. We're going to send plenty more money to who knows who. I mean, it's never going to stop unless we do something about it. Unless we decide, you know what? We're going to fight for what we want as a generation. We're going to fight for our jobs, for our right to try to pursue some kind of livelihood, because a job isn't a livelihood. It's just something to do. A livelihood is when you get paid enough money to live, enough money to build a family, enough money to buy land like I have. And this took a lot of time and preparation. It did not happen overnight, and it took a lot of sacrifice. But it's doable. And if we band together, we can make it far more doable. But if we let them take everything, which is what they're trying to do right now, then there's not going to be anything left for us to do it with. We can take back our nation, but you can't take it back from scratch. You need something to start with. I have land. I have knowledge. I have capacity to produce. I have a facility on the other side of my property that can produce food, medicine, explosives, you name it. I can produce it. I'm a chemical engineer. I know how to do this stuff. But I can't build an army as one person. If we're going to come together and fight for what our generation needs and what our generation believes in, then we have to decide as a generation to fight together, to believe in those things together. Until we do that, we're not going to be successful. Until we do that, they're going to continue decreasing our actual wages. They're going to continue increasing our worked hours. They're going to increase our rent. They're going to increase the cost at the grocery store, because the more that we are indebted to them, the more we have to depend on them for survival, the less likely it is that we're going to try to fight for ourselves. I mean, don't you see that? There's no other reason for them to be slowly working us towards complete reliance on them, if not to try to force us to comply when it comes time to sending us overseas to fight some forever war like we were fighting in Afghanistan, or to force us to take some job that we know is a dead end, but we have to take it, otherwise we don't get any money at all. I mean, we have to put a stop to this. We have to choose to put a stop to it. I want to. I'm sick of this. I've been fighting for over 2 years for licenses and grants and accreditations for my company, and it's been an uphill battle. Why? Because the only people in government who are making these high-level decisions are Gen X and baby boomers. They don't want to give my company a chance, because if they do, I'll become powerful. And Lord knows if I'm powerful, I'm going to use that power to dismantle theirs. They're trying to stop me, and they refuse to give me a space at their table. All the while, we don't have a table. We're not even willing to interact with each other in a serious way, because we're so concerned with what gender we are, or what sort of beliefs we have about abortion, or whether or not we support some foreign nation over 6,000 miles away. We need to be talking about whether or not we're going to support each other as a generation, regardless of race, regardless of religion, regardless of what your views are, liberal or conservative, doesn't matter. We're all being taken advantage of. And the only way we're going to build anything for our generation that they can't take, that they can't touch, is if we build it together and we push them out. But we continue to fight each other while they force us to suffer. I don't understand this. I'm not suffering. I have my land, but I'm not looking to let you all suffer. I want to help. But I can't help if you don't align yourselves with your own generation. I'm aligned with you. I want to be on your side. Gen X and baby boomers are not my allies. You are my allies. And maybe the millennials are acceptable, but Gen Z is my concern. Our people are my concern. We have to decide to make ourselves our people, to make ourselves our concern, and stop being concerned with whatever political candidate they force down our throats. I mean, there wasn't even a Democratic primary this year, and there hasn't been a decent primary for the conservative side of things, the Republican side, in the past 2 election cycles. It's got to be Trump, and now it's got to be Kamala. We can decide to say no to both. We don't have to deal with them. We don't have to deal with any of this system. The economy that's geared against us, throw it away. The politics that we still don't have a voice at the table for, ignore them. Build our own nation. One generation under our discipline, under our decisions. We can do that. But we have to commit ourselves to it. I am ready and willing to do what's necessary to defend the rights and freedoms of Generation Z and every generation to follow. But I can't do that on my own. We have to do this together or it doesn't work. United, we prevail. But divided, we continue to be taken advantage of by the older elites. We continue to have our voices squashed, to have our achievements squandered. No one cares that we're trying to move our country forward, that we even want our country to survive. The boomers certainly don't care. They're going to be dead before it even matters whether or not the United States is still the powerhouse of the world. And it's a disgrace that they would send us a country that their parents fought and died for, and say, well, we're going to sell the majority of our manufacturing to China. We're going to put so much sovereign debt into other foreign nations' hands that they're basically going to own our country. And then when it all comes crashing down and the infrastructure collapses and there's no more clean drinking water, there are no jobs, there's no place to live, well, you can just live on the streets and figure it out, and we'll be dead, so we won't have to hear what you have to say. That's what they've decided to do, and we're letting it happen. We don't have to let it happen. I said earlier in the video that this is my agricultural land. I want to grow here. You need 3 things to grow a crop. You need sunlight, you need rainfall, and you need a place to put it. The sun will shine. It'll shine regardless of who is here. The rain will fall. And the rain may be rare, but it will fall. But the land, regardless of whether it's here or not, is not going to be available unless I take it for myself. Unless I push the weeds out. Unless I force everything out of my way, burn through it if I have to, and get down to the roots where I can plant my own crops and shape the look of this field to my design, in my image. That's what our generation has to do today. Right now, we are facing a thicket created by baby boomers and Gen X to try to silence us, to try to force us back to the trails that they have decided will exist, to try to force us to live lives that they have already decided the flow of. I'm here trying to tell you we don't have to do that. When the other generations put up a wall of trees to try to force us to stay in our lane, cut the trees down, burn them if you have to, down to the roots, and start again in a way that works for us. In the spring, this field will be completely cut, it will be completely burned, and it will be completely replanted in the way that I want it to be. It will be my crops that grow here, not these saplings. The saplings are dead and dying because I have burned them, and I will cut them, and I'll keep burning and cutting until they're all gone. It doesn't matter how long it takes. It doesn't matter how much energy it takes, because eventually this field will be mine again. I will take it back from nature, and it's an everlasting battle. It will never stop. Just like our fight against older generations is not going to go away. It's not going to be something that happens in a weekend. It's going to take years. But it has to start today. If it doesn't start now, it will never start. It will get to the point where these saplings are full-grown trees and they're no longer able to be cut down by manual means. It'll take a far greater investment, a far greater loss of life on our part to try to secure anything. We have the means to kill the saplings when they're small. We can take back our country before it's completely taken away from us, from our generation. But we have to defend what is ours now. We have to burn away the weeds today before they overtake everything. I want to help, but I need a network. I need some kind of organization throughout our generation to make this happen. No one in my generation seems to be talking this way. They refuse to address the issues. We must address these issues facing our generation together. But we can't do that in comment sections and message boards. We need to come together. We need to create a union of our own people. And we need to put aside all of this nonsense, all of these frivolous details of who I'm going to align with and why. We're all the same generation. We're all going to suffer when climate change and economic collapse and social unrest and political disturbance, when all of these things become our issues. It's not going to matter whether or not we're on the same page on abortion. We're all going to be suffering far greater issues than any nonsense at the polls today. We need to come together, and we need to do it now. We needed to do it yesterday, but we can still do it. The saplings are not yet full grown. But we have to make that decision today. My name again is Zach Alexander. I'm the owner of the Sensable Company. I believe in the future of Generation Z and of Generation Alpha and every generation to come after it. But if we're going to defend, protect our rights and freedoms today, then it requires us doing a lot more than just riding the coattails of our fathers and forefathers who frankly could care less whether or not we live or die. They do not appreciate our lives. They don't care about our generation. They've thrown us under the bus time and again. We cannot let them ruin everything else that our country has to offer. We must come together, and I'm more than ready to make the sacrifices necessary, but I can't do that on my own. We must all of us unite.